Welcome back, guys! Now we are on part 2 for painting the sunset using oil paint. Where we left off with part 1 was right here. We were starting to paint that orange-red glow at the tree line. And once we finished painting that orange glow, I started to paint the darker shadow of the tree. Because that tree line is between us and the sun, it is in shadow, and that's why we're making it nice and dark. I used a blend of colors for this, including a little bit of black, but mostly sap green and cooler red and blue tones. And I'm using a round-tipped brush to paint this tree line, just making a nice fuzzy, bumpy top of the tree line there. As you can see, I'm painting now and using a smoother back and forth motion to get the bottom of that tree line. As the trees are moving closer to our sunset point, they are going to get lighter and fade into that orange-red color. The base of the tree line, right below the midpoint where the sunset is peeking over the tree line, is more of a purple-red color. So I mixed that color using alizarin crimson and some ultramarine blue and just lightly blended that orange color into my darker shadow color at the base of the tree line and moved that color out and into the darker shadow color for my tree line and just blended it all nice and smooth, so we have a nice easy transition from warm to cool. Here I'm boosting the contrast a bit where the sun is peeking over that tree line using a darker, cooler red and blending it right from the top down into the tree line. While looking at my reference photo, I noticed that there are shorter trees that are closer to us that we could see, so I went back with my brush and made several layers of trees using darker colors for that small tree line that it doesn't quite make it to the top of the tree line there. I made it about halfway up, so I'm defining our separate sets of trees that we can see right now. And now I'm moving on to the grassy plains in front of the tree line. We're moving closer to us, to the viewer, and I mixed a sap green with some yellow and some burnt umber to get this cooler green shade for the grass. Some of the sunlight from the sun setting reached that central portion of the grassy plain, so I made that a little bit brighter by just adding some cadmium yellow and blending it smoothly back and forth into my cooler green. So now we're painting the shadow between the grass and the water. I'm using a cooler shade here, a mix of ultramarine blue, sap green, and burnt umber, and making nice smooth thin lines across the edge of the grass closer to us. And now we're moving on to painting the water. So even though you think water is blue, because when you look at water you see blue, water is not blue. You need to paint what you see from a color standpoint, not based on what you think that color should be. So here the sun is setting on the water, so I'm painting this part of the water, that nice reflecting color of the sun. I'm starting out with a base color that's a little bit of a darker, muddier orange, and then I'm going to go back over that color with my brighter orange later. I just wanted to set the place for my orange water, and now I'm going in and painting my gray, purple, blue shade of the water. And now we're brightening up that reflection of the sunlight on the water. I'm using a mix of cadmium yellow, cadmium red, some white, and that color is blending into the grayer color on the outer edge of that orange color, so it's dulling it down a little bit. I'm trying not to blur too much into my gray color because I don't want to pull too much of that cooler tone into my sunset. So this was a tricky process here, trying to get that warm color down without it becoming like muddy from the surrounding colors. To create the sunset reflection on the water, I'm following the same process that I used to paint the sun and the sky. I painted the orange shades around the sun, then used cadmium yellow and made a large circle right around the sun, blended that into the orange right around it, and then I used some white paint right in the center where the brightest part of the sun is. Okay, next we're moving on to the foreground. The foreground is the closest to us and it is in shadow, so I'm using a lot of black and very cool tones here. This material is all marshy plants and trees, so there's also going to be some sap green and let's see, we have some phthalo blue, some ultramarine blue, but in general we're keeping it nice and cool because these things are in shadow. Only small bits of the plant material has sunlight hitting it here. So with my base color, I'm just using some sap green mixed with brown, and then we're going to go back over this color with our very dark color, and that's going to really make that sunset stand out, having that dark contrast right in the front of the painting. Alright guys, that concludes part 2 of painting the sunset. Make sure you check back next week for part 3. That's going to be our third and final session of learning how to paint the sunset using oil paints. Next week we're going to focus on putting more detail into the foreground, all those plants that are in shadow, and doing some finishing touches to really make that painting pop and make that sunset the focus of our piece. So check back next week, and in the meantime, I ordered prints of this painting that we're learning how to paint. Here, this is an art print. This is an 8" by 10", so it's the same size as the original painting. These are available on my website, www.thepaintingstoof.com. So go ahead and grab one of these for yourself today. These start at $22, and I got this frame for $6 at Michael's craft store. So this frame is a really nice touch too. You can just hang it up anywhere in your home.